He rescued the saddest alien girl, and soon two women would need him more than he ever imagined. Humanity? Yeah, let's begin. Chase Summers had never thought silence could feel so heavy. In the maintenance corridors of Outpost Delta 9, the hum of circulation fans and the occasional hiss of pressurized valves were the closest things he had to company. At 35, he was built like the kind of man who should be leading soldiers or competing in planetary athletics. Broad shoulders, thick arms, the kind of presence that filled a room. But instead, he spent his days crawling through conduits designed for the narrow frames of the Navoran engineers who had built the station centuries ago. Each time his shoulders scraped the walls, it was a reminder Delta 9 had not been built for humans. Humans were still the new tenants in this part of the galaxy, tolerated but rarely embraced. The work should have kept him busy enough to ignore the emptiness gnawing at his chest. Filters clogged pumps, misaligned thermal regulators in constant need of recalibration. The endless cycle of patchwork repairs should have filled his hours with purpose. Yet when Chase wiped the sweat from his brow after another hour crawling through narrow ducts, there was no satisfaction waiting for him. Just silence. Just the familiar hollowness where laughter once lived. Sarah's laughter. Her name still came unbidden like a knife between his ribs. 5 years had passed since the shuttle accident. 5 years since her voice, bright and sharp with wit, had gone silent. They'd said time would heal, that the ache would dull. Maybe it had for other men, but for Chase, the days had simply become grayer shades of the same monotone existence. He had taken this posting at Delta 9 because he thought isolation would help. No more Earth, no more sympathetic looks from friends, no more empty house filled with echoes of memories. Just the void. Just him. It had worked for a while. Out here, no one expected him to smile. But grief was patient. It followed him into the maintenance tunnels, crouched behind him when he ate alone in the station's mess hall, stared at him from the reflection in every viewport. He was surviving. He was not living. Summers' report came the flat voice of Controller Pax through his comm unit, yanking him back to the present. Chase adjusted the scanner in his hands, forcing himself to sound professional. Approaching junction T14, still not seeing any signs of the reported leak. Copy Pax droned as if already bored. Sensors still show anomalous readings. Could be a ghost signal, but we need confirmation. Chase grimaced. Ghost signals. Always ghost signals. He'd spent half his career chasing after them, random fluctuations in the aging station's sensors pings that meant nothing except wasted time. Understood, he muttered, ducking beneath a low beam. The scanner flickered in his hand, static washing across the display before stabilizing again. Chase frowned. That was new. The station's quirks were many, but this pattern, sharp, jumps across multiple frequencies, wasn't standard. He adjusted the calibration, tapped the side of the unit like an old Earth mechanic coaxing a stubborn engine. The readings didn't vanish. They sharpened. Hang on, he said more to himself than Pax. I'm picking up something weird. Signals bouncing between bands, not possible with our systems. Repeat, Pax sounded alert for once. It's not ours, Chase said slowly. His gut tightened as recognition tugged at the edge of his memory. This is an external ping. He recalibrated, narrowed the field. The origin triangulated, popping onto the scanner with a clarity that made his pulse skip. Source Proxima Station, industrial sector. There was a pause, then Pax's voice came colder than usual. That's outside our jurisdiction. Summers document it and head back. Chase stared at the display. The pattern wasn't random. He knew these rhythms, faint though they were. Not Navaran, not Verdani, not Krell. This was human, ancient, almost forgotten. No, he whispered. His throat tightened. That's a distress code. Old Earth pre-unification. Static filled the comm before Pax snapped Summers, do not engage. That's an order. But Chase's boots were already carrying him down the tunnel toward the nearest transport bay. His scanner clutched tight, heart pounding in a rhythm that matched the faint beeping of the code. For 5 years, he drifted without purpose. Now in the static of a forgotten channel, something called to him. "Something's wrong over there," he said, cutting Pax off. "I'm taking a maintenance shuttle." "Summers," Pax barked. "The captain will have your ass for this." "Then he can get in line," Chase muttered, killing the channel. The maintenance shuttle was no warship. It was little more than a cramped pod with engines bolted to the back and tools rattling in the storage compartments. But it was fast enough to carry him the 30 light minutes to Proxima Station and registered clean enough to pass through security nets without raising alarms. He strapped in, powered up, and felt the old thrill of acceleration press him into the seat. For the first time in years, his pulse raced for something other than grief. The stars stretched into lines as he jumped to transit speed. In the silence of the cockpit, Sarah's face flickered across his memory unbidden. He clenched the controls until his knuckles whitened. "This isn't about you," he whispered to the ghost of his past. "This is about now." 30 minutes later, Proxima filled the viewport. Once a thriving hub of trade, the industrial sector had been shuttered for decades, its factories automated, its workers long since replaced. The docking bay Chase selected was abandoned dust caked across the locking clamps. His shuttle clanged down onto the deck, the sound echoing through the empty chamber. The air inside was stale metallic. Lights flickered weakly overhead as he stepped into the corridor boots, crunching against debris. The place stank of neglect, but beneath it lingered another scent, acrid sharp, the stench of fear. Chase's jaw tightened, his scanner pulsed, guiding him deeper. Dark metal walls closed around him, oppressive, suffocating. He turned a corner and froze. Cages, row upon row of them lining the corridor like grotesque trophies. Some empty, others filled with creatures that defied taxonomy, too many limbs, too many eyes, whimpers that made his skin crawl. Some cages held beings that were undeniably sentient, curled in misery, eyes dull with resignation. Chase's stomach twisted. "This isn't a shelter," he muttered. "This is a damn prison." The signal pulled him deeper still into a narrow hallway marked with faded alien glyphs. His heart hammered louder with every step. Then he saw her. The cage was barely large enough for her to sit upright. She huddled in the corner, thin arms wrapped around bony knees. Skin the soft violet of twilight marred by grime. Hair snow-white tangled into mats that caught the weak light like threads of silk. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold. Huge, luminous, blue like oceans he hadn't seen in half a decade, and filled with tears. She looked up at him, and in that instant, Chase Summers felt his chest constrict, as if an invisible hand had closed around his heart. Those eyes, lost, afraid, unbearably alone, were Sarah's eyes in her final days, staring at him from a hospital bed he could never save her from. "Hey there," he whispered, dropping to one knee before the cage. His voice, roughened by disuse, gentled for the first time in years. "You okay, kid?" She flinched but did not retreat. Thin fingers curled around the bars, trembling. A data pad blinked on the cage door. Chase tapped it, scrolling until standard appeared. Specimen 4872, species Lorellian, status abandoned, age equivalent 8 Earth years, scheduled for research allocation 3 cycles. The words stabbed like knives. Research allocation, euphemism for vivisection, for exploitation. Rage flared hot and clean. Chase scanned the magnetic lock recognition flashing. Child's play. With practiced hands, he popped the seal. The door creaked open. "I'm not leaving you here," he said, voice steady, almost fierce. "You're coming with me." She stared, uncomprehending, as if freedom was a concept too distant to believe. Chase extended his hand slowly, deliberately. "It's okay, I won't hurt you." For a long moment, nothing. Then hesitantly trembling, her small violet hand slipped into his. Cool, feather-light, fragile. Chase's throat tightened. He had not felt such fragile trust in years. The alarm shattered the moment. Sirens blared, red lights strobed, alien warnings crackled through the loudspeakers. Chase didn't hesitate. He scooped the girl into his arms. She weighed almost nothing. "Time to go," he growled, hard hammering. He ran, boots pounding through corridors, her arms clutching around his neck. For the first time in years, the hollow inside him wasn't empty. It was burning. Purpose surged through his veins, fierce and undeniable. And as the shadows of pursuit grew louder behind him, Chase Summers knew one truth with absolute clarity: his life would never be the same again. The alarms echoed like 1,000 metallic hammers pounding against the walls. Red light strobed in violent pulses that seemed to stab at Chase's eyes as he sprinted through the corridors of Proxima Station's industrial sector. The girl clung to him with desperate strength, her small arms wrapped around his neck, her fragile body pressed tight against his chest. She was trembling, whether from fear or the icy chill of the facility's air. Chase couldn't tell. What he did know was that he had to move fast. The corridors twisted in confusing patterns, more like a labyrinth than a factory. Faded directional signs offered little help, their symbols alien and worn. Every turn seemed to echo with the thunder of approaching footsteps or the mechanical clatter of automated security units. "Stay with me, kid," he whispered, though his voice was ragged with exertion. He adjusted his grip, tucking her closer against his chest. She weighed almost nothing too little for a child her age. Malnourished, neglected. Another stab of anger cut through his adrenaline, fueling his legs. They reached a junction where the hall split three ways. Chase froze, scanning frantically. Left corridor sealed bulkhead. Right pulsing red light that suggested active patrols. Center faint glow of open space, maybe a loading bay. Before he could decide, the girl stirred in his arms. Her tiny hand lifted trembling and pointed toward the right corridor. Chase blinked. That way, she nodded quickly, her luminous eyes shining with something stronger than fear. Certainty. It wasn't rational, but he trusted her. He veered right. The girl's small fingers clung tighter to his collar as if to anchor him. The corridor stretched on, narrowing into a service passage. Chase's boots splashed through shallow puddles of condensation. Ahead, dim light spilled through an open archway. Relief surged in his chest as the passage opened into a cavernous loading bay, the very one where his shuttle sat waiting. But relief curdled instantly into dread. Two guards stood beside the vessel. Insectoid, tall and angular, their glossy exoskeletons gleamed under the emergency strobes. Each carried a disruptor rifle slung casually in its clawed hands, but their attention was fixed on Chase's shuttle. "Damn it," Chase muttered, ducking behind a stack of cargo containers. He set the girl down, gently crouching so their eyes met. Her wide gaze shimmered with panic. "Stay here for a second," he whispered. "I'll be right back." She grabbed his sleeve, her grip surprisingly strong. "I won't leave you," he promised, prying her fingers loose. "Trust me." Her lower lip trembled, but she nodded. Chase's heart hammered as he crept around the containers. The first guard's breathing apparatus was poorly shielded, a Krell design flaw he knew well from maintenance manuals. Moving with quiet precision, Chase reached out, fingers brushing the regulator, and short-circuited it with a quick spark from his multi-tool. The guard convulsed, clutching at its throat as its suit systems collapsed. Its partner spun toward the commotion, mandibles clicking in alarm. Chase didn't hesitate. He snatched a heavy loading hook from the wall and swung with every ounce of human strength he possessed. The hook slammed into the guard's neck joint with a sickening crack, the insectoid crumpled legs twitching. Chase stood panting, sweat dripping down his brow. He looked at the fallen guard's chest heaving and muttered, "Sorry about that. Not really sorry, though." He turned back. The girl was watching him from behind the crates, eyes wide with both awe and terror. Chase forced a grim smile. Time to go. He scooped her up again and sprinted for the shuttle. His fingers flew across the controls the moment he set her down in the co-pilot's seat. Engines roared, systems flickered to life, and clamps released with a metallic groan. "Hold tight," he told her, punching thrusters. The shuttle lurched upward, clearing the bay, as the station's alarms screamed louder, now joined by shrill alerts in alien languages. Chase knew Proxima security wouldn't ignore an unauthorized departure. The comm crackled. "Unscheduled departure from Bay 17. Identify yourself immediately." Chase flipped the switch, killing the transmission. No time to talk. He angled the shuttle away from the station's bulk, pushing speed to unsafe levels. His hands danced across the console, instincts guiding him through evasive maneuvers. Beside him, the girl clutched the edges of her seat. Her knuckles turned pale lavender as she gripped harder. Her eyes, though, stayed locked on him, watching, studying. "You ever been on a shuttle before?" he asked, voice strained but gentler now. She gave a small nod. "Can you understand me?" Another nod, this one firmer. Chase let out a slow breath. "Can you speak?" The girl opened her mouth, then closed it again, her throat working soundlessly. Frustration flickered across her face. She touched her neck and shook her head. "That's okay," Chase said softly. "We'll figure it out." The comm blared again, angrier. This time, Maintenance Shuttle 5 returned to Proxima immediately or be fired upon. Chase gritted his teeth. If he headed back to Delta 9 directly, they'd intercept him before he got halfway. He needed cover. His eyes darted to the nav display. The asteroid field, dangerous, unstable, exactly what he needed. "Hang on, kid," he muttered, throttling hard toward the tumbling rocks. The shuttle shuddered as they plunged into the field. Massive asteroids drifted in eerie silence, colliding and grinding like ancient gods wrestling in slow motion. Chase's fingers tightened around the controls, weaving through narrow gaps where one mistake would mean instant annihilation. The girl gasped, clutching the seat as the shuttle twisted violently. Chase risked a glance at her. She was pale, but her eyes, those luminous, ocean blue eyes, shone with fierce determination, as if she understood the stakes. For 20 agonizing minutes, they zigzagged through the maelstrom. Behind them, distant flashes marked the security ships attempting pursuit, but their bulkier craft couldn't match Chase's reckless maneuvers. One by one, they fell behind, unwilling to risk deeper entry into the field. When at last the shuttle burst free of the asteroid belt, Outpost Delta 9 loomed ahead, its ringed habitat modules glittering like a crown against the void. Relief washed through Chase so strongly he almost sagged against the controls. "Maintenance's Shuttle 5," came the steady voice of Delta 9's traffic controller. "You're returning outside scheduled parameters. Explain." Chase steadied his breathing. "Control, this is Summers. The leak at T-14 was worse than expected. Had to source parts from Proxima." A pause. Too long. "No requisition was filed," the voice returned, suspicious. "Emergency situation," Chase replied smoothly, forcing calm into his tone. "Full report will be filed upon return. Requesting docking clearance at Bay 4. Another long silence. The girl reached out her tiny hand, brushing his sleeve as if sensing his fear. Then, "Clearance granted. Report to Commander Thorne upon arrival." Chase exhaled slowly, a mix of relief and dread. "Copy that." He looked at the girl. She met his gaze with white, trusting eyes. For the first time since Sarah's death, Chase felt something shift deep inside his chest. Not just anger, not just duty. Hope. But as the shuttle descended toward the docking bay, Chase knew the real challenge was only beginning. Smuggling her past Thorne, hiding her from station inspections, keeping her alive in a place where even humans struggled to belong. These would be battles far more dangerous than any asteroid field. "Now comes the hard part," he murmured, more to himself than to her. The girl tilted her head curiously, then pointed toward a small storage compartment beneath the console. Chase followed her gesture, blinking. "You're saying you want to hide there?" She nodded. A startled laugh escaped him. "You're smarter than you look, kid, but you'll need air." She mimed, covering her mouth, then pointed at the emergency kit. Chase opened it, pulling out a portable oxygen mask. He raised an eyebrow. "That's actually brilliant." She gave the smallest smile, a fragile flicker of light amid the storm. As Delta 9's docking clamps locked onto the shuttle, Chase tucked her carefully into the compartment, fastening the oxygen mask to her face. "I'll get you out as soon as it's safe," he promised, closing the hatch. Then he straightened, wiped sweat from his brow, and steeled himself for the next fight. Because saving her from the shelter had been the easy part. Keeping her free would be the battle of his life. The docking clamps shuddered as they locked the maintenance shuttle into Bay 4. The vibration ran up through Chase's boots and into his bones, a reminder that the lie he had just sold control was only going to buy him minutes, maybe hours. Beyond the airlock, Commander Thorne would be waiting. Thorne always waited when he smelled blood in the water. Chase glanced at the compartment where the girl lay hidden beneath the console. Her tiny form was curled tight, her violet skin dimly visible beneath the oxygen mask's glow. For a moment, he felt the overwhelming urge to rip the hatch open, scoop her up, and carry her openly through the bay, daring anyone to stop him. But that would be suicide, and she deserved better than a martyr's gesture. "Hang tight, kid," he murmured. "Just one more performance." The hatch hissed open. The bay lights blazed too bright after the gloom of Proxima's halls. And there stood Commander Thorne, all three of his eyes fixed on Chase with a predator's scrutiny. The Verdani commander's emerald-hued skin was stretched taut across his high cheekbones, and his arms folded across his chest, in a posture designed to radiate disdain. Summers, Thorne growled. Explain yourself. Chase forced his shoulders to square his posture casual but not insolent. Sir, I detected an anomalous signal from Proxima Station. It matched old Earth distress patterns. I investigated, found evidence of illegal activity in the industrial sector. Thorne's central eye narrowed. What kind of activity? Trafficking, sir. Sentient beings kept in cages. A flicker of surprise crossed Thorne's face, quickly masked. And did you interfere? Chase held the commander's gaze, lying with practiced ease. No, sir. Just documented the coordinates. Thought you'd want to alert the proper authorities. For a long moment, silence. The tension in the bay was suffocating. Then Thorne finally grunted. Very well. File your report. But next time, Summers, follow protocol. Yes, sir. Dismissed Chase walked calmly down the ramp, every step feeling like a dance on a razor's edge. He only let his breath out once the bay doors sealed behind him. Minutes later, he returned to the shuttle under the guise of securing his tools. He opened the compartment. The girl was still there, curled small but alive, her blue eyes watching him with unblinking intensity. Coast is clear, he whispered, lifting her out. She clutched his neck as if afraid he might vanish. Chase carried her through the maintenance tunnels instead of the main corridors, avoiding the busiest paths. By the time they reached his quarters, his shirt was damp with sweat, and his arms ached, but he hadn't slowed once. Inside, he sealed the door, finally exhaling the breath he'd been holding since Proxima. He set her down gently in the middle of his Spartan living space. The girl stood wide-eyed, taking in the room the single bed, the narrow table, the dull couch that looked barely used. To her, it must have seemed a palace. Home sweet home, Chase muttered, locking the door. It's not much, but it's safe. She wandered with tentative steps, touching the edge of the couch, brushing her fingers across the table's smooth surface, staring at the ambient lights like they were stars. Wonder lit her expression, and Chase felt his throat tighten. To him, this was just a cell with a softer mattress. To her, it was freedom. You need a name, he said suddenly, realizing he couldn't just keep calling her kid or girl. He studied her violet skin, the faint shimmer like petals under moonlight. How about Luna? Your skin reminds me of lilacs back on Earth. She tilted her head, considering. Then she nodded, and the tiniest smile curved her lips, the first he'd seen. Luna it is, Chase said softly, returning her smile. But the moment fractured as his comm unit chimed. He tapped it, and Commander Thorne's voice filled the room. Attention all personnel. Due to recent security concerns, a mandatory inspection of all living quarters will commence at 0800 hours tomorrow. Any unauthorized items or contraband will result in immediate disciplinary action. Thorne out. Chase and Luna exchanged alarmed glances. Well, that complicates things, Chase muttered, raking a hand through his short hair. 24 hours. Less, really. He needed to hide her somewhere that wouldn't show up on a bioscan. The air vents were too small. Storage compartments would be checked, and Thorne's inspectors would run atmospheric scans. No amount of locking doors would fool them. First things first, Chase said, crouching to Luna's level. Let's get you cleaned up and fed. Then we'll figure out the hiding problem. The bathroom presented its own awkward challenges. The girl blinked at the shower controls, unfamiliar with the water spray. Chase demonstrated, then quickly stepped out to give her privacy. He busied himself digging through old clothes, pulling out a faded t-shirt that might serve as a makeshift dress. When Luna emerged wrapped in a towel, Chase nearly didn't recognize her. Clean, her white hair gleamed like starlight, cascading down her back in soft waves. Her violet skin glowed with health beneath the grime. Her eyes, too big for her face, were brighter, no longer dulled by fear. Here, Chase said, handing her the shirt. Try this. She pulled it on the hem, falling nearly to her knees. The sight twisted something in Chase's chest. For years he had walked through his life numb, but now everything he felt was sharp raw. Protectiveness, anger, hope. Food was the next hurdle. He had no idea what Lorelians ate. He set out samples of everything the synthesizer could produce: protein cubes, vegetable paste, fruit gel, hydration packs. Luna sniffed each cautiously before pointing to the fruit gel and vegetable paste. Good choice, Chase said. Those are the least terrible. As she ate, Chase paced the room. The inspection would be thorough. They'd scan for life signs, check every container, maybe even run atmospheric tests. He needed something smarter than a locked door. His eyes landed on the environmental control panel. Inspiration struck. Luna, he said, kneeling, how long can your species hold their breath? She held up 4 fingers. 4 minutes, Chase whistled. That's impressive, but not long enough. He grabbed his toolkit. Okay, we'll need to improvise. For hours, he worked dismantling his storage unit and rebuilding it with a shielded compartment line. It was scavenged sensor-dampening material from the maintenance bay. Sweat ran down his back as he welded, spliced, and sealed. Luna sat nearby watching intently. When he reached for a tool, she handed it to him before he asked as if she'd read his thoughts. Her intelligence was obvious. Chase wondered, who had she been before the cage? A daughter, a student? Did someone out there search for her still? Finally, he stepped back, admiring the makeshift hideaway. Not perfect, but it'll mask your life signs during a routine sweep. You'll have to stay still and quiet. Think you can do that? Luna nodded solemnly. Good girl. He ruffled her now clean hair. We'll get through this. Just then the comm chimed again. A station-wide announcement. The monthly supply shuttle from Earth has arrived. All departments report to Cargo Bay 2 for inventory distribution at 1400 hours. Chase checked the time. Perfect. Supplies meant he could get food, maybe even clothing for Luna. I need to go to the cargo bay, he told her. You stay here and don't open the door for anyone, understand? Her eyes widened with fear at the thought of being left alone. Hey, Chase said, gently crouching. I promise I'll come back. I won't leave you. She studied his face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. That's my brave girl. He gave her a reassuring smile. I'll be back before you know it. The cargo bay was chaos when he arrived. Crew from every department jostled for their requisitions. Chase scanned the crowd, slipping in with a maintenance clipboard to mask his purpose. He gathered nutrient supplements, a spare data pad loaded with educational programs, and from a mislabeled personal shipment, a bundle of clothing that might fit Luna. He was turning to leave when a flash of emerald green caught his eye. A tall woman with skin like polished jade and hair of molten silver moved gracefully among the crates. She drew stares without seeming to notice her movements, fluid, her posture regal. Something about her tugged at Chase's memory, though he was sure he'd never seen her before. Before he could puzzle it out, his comm crackled with an urgent alert. Security breach detected in Residential Section C. All personnel respond immediately. Chase's blood went cold. Residential Section C, his quarters. Luna. The supplies nearly spilled from his arms as he broke into a run. He barreled through the crowded corridors, heart slamming against his ribs. Most security alerts were routine malfunctioning systems. Petty disputes, but the timing was too exact, too pointed. He rounded the last corner and skidded to a halt. 2 Draxian security officers stood outside his door, ridge-plated foreheads glinting under the lights. And between them, small trembling, clutching his data pad, was Luna. Summers, the officer barked. This unauthorized life form was detected accessing restricted station systems from your quarters. Chase's mind spun, words jammed in his throat. Then before he could speak, a melodic voice cut through the tension. Officer Krell, there's been a misunderstanding. This child is part of my research team. Chase turned, stunned. The emerald-skinned woman from the cargo bay was walking toward them, silver hair flowing like liquid light. Her expression was calm, confident. She is a Lorelian child, not a creature, she said firmly. And yes, I claim responsibility. She arrived on today's supply shuttle. Luna's eyes darted to Chase's, fear trembling at the edges, but behind it a spark of recognition. The woman smiled faintly, though her gaze was sharp as steel. Isn't that right, Technician Summers? And just like that, Chase realized he wasn't alone anymore. For a moment, the world seemed to freeze. Chase stood rigid at the threshold of his quarters, his mind scrambling for purchase, as the emerald-skinned woman's words hung in the air like a lifeline in a trap. The Draxian security officers shifted uneasily. Their ridge-plated brows furrowed, exchanging glances that spoke of suspicion and the burden of responsibility. Finally, Officer Krell's gravelly voice broke the silence. No Lorelian research assistants are registered on the manifest. The woman's smile didn't falter. If anything, it sharpened. An oversight I fully intended to correct today, she said smoothly. The child arrived on the latest supply shuttle. My assistant technician, Summers, was kind enough to escort her while I completed my inventory duties. Chase caught her glance, a pointed flicker of emerald gold eyes that said without words, "Play along." "Yes," Chase said quickly, forcing calm into his tone. "That's right. She's with the xenobotany team." Luna clutched the data pad tighter, her small form trembling between the towering officers. Chase's stomach nodded, but then she surprised him, nodding vigorously as if to confirm the story. "Clever kid." Officer Krell frowned, still unconvinced. "And why was the child accessing security protocols?" "That's on me," Chase said, stepping forward. "I left my data pad unlocked. She must have poked around by accident. She's curious. Probably thought it was a game." Luna extended the pad toward the officer with wide, apologetic eyes. Krell hesitated, then grunted, clearly swayed more by the child's expression than by Chase's words. "File the proper registration by the end of shift," botanist Niara Krell ordered, turning his suspicion on the woman. "Then to Chase, and you secure your devices. Next infraction goes directly to Commander Thorne." "Yes, sir," Chase said evenly. The officers turned and left their heavy boots thudding down the corridor. The instant they disappeared, Chase released the breath he'd been holding. He turned to the woman. "Thank you," he said, meaning it more than he expected. "But how the hell did you know?" The woman inclined her head gracefully. "I received this an hour ago." She lifted a slim communication device, its display glowing with an encrypted message: "Human technician harboring Lorelian child. Proxima facility security en route to Delta 9. Intervention required." Chase stiffened. "Who sent that?" "The same network that alerted me to unusual activity at Proxima yesterday," she replied. "I am Niara of the Verdani, a xenobotanist on this station, and an operative of the Conservation Alliance." She knelt, lowering herself to Luna's eye level. Her voice gentled. "Hello, little one. I am Niara. Do you remember your name?" Luna glanced at Chase, uncertainty flashing in her luminous eyes. He gave a small nod of encouragement. She touched her chest and mouthed Luna. "That's what I named her," Chase explained. "She doesn't or can't speak." Niara's expression softened. "Lorelians communicate telepathically with their kin. She likely hasn't developed strong verbal skills." "May I?" She extended her hand. Luna hesitated, then nodded. Niara placed her fingers lightly against the child's forehead, closing her eyes. Silence stretched for a breath, then two. When Niara opened her eyes, her smile was tinged with sorrow. "Her true name is Elria. She was separated from her family during a raid on their colony. The raiders sold her to Proxima." Chase's gut twisted. Those bastards were going to experiment on her. "Yes," Niara said grimly. "Lorelian's telepathic abilities are coveted by certain research groups. She is rare, valuable, which makes her all the more endangered." Chase clenched his fists. "I couldn't leave her there." "No," Niara agreed softly, studying him. "You couldn't. That is very human of you." The way she said human startled him. It carried no contempt, no mockery, only admiration. Heat prickled at the back of his neck, but her next words stole the warmth. "The facility has filed theft charges. They claim Elria is property, not a sentient being. Until my alliance contacts can discredit them, you're both in danger." "And tomorrow's inspection," Chase asked, dread gnawing at his chest. "I've already registered Elria as my research assistant, backdated in the personnel system. It will pass a casual check. But," Niara's expression hardened, "it would be suspicious if she remained in your quarters. She should stay with me." Chase's chest tightened at the thought of letting her go. He'd known Elria less than a day, yet the idea of surrendering her felt unbearable. Almost as if she sensed it, Elria moved to his side, slipping her small hand into his. "Perhaps," Niara said, noting the gesture. "You could both come. My quarters are more spacious, and my greenhouse shields will mask additional life signs. It would be safer." The invitation hung in the air. Chase studied her carefully. There was something in her gaze, warmth, interest, and maybe more that went beyond pragmatism. That might be best, he admitted. As they gathered the supplies Chase had scavenged, their arms brushed. The brief contact jolted through him, sparking memories he thought long dead. He glanced at Niara. She met his eyes, her expression unreadable, but her gaze lingered on his lips before flicking away. Elria tugged both their hands, breaking the moment with childlike impatience. Chase chuckled softly, though his pulse still hammered. Niara's quarters were nothing like his. Where Chase's felt barren, Niara's was alive. Lush vegetation filled the space vines curling across the walls, bioluminescent blooms casting soft glows like stars. The air was humid, fragrant with floral scents. It was a garden carved out of metal and steel, an oasis of green amid the void. Elria's eyes widened with delight. She darted among the plants, touching leaves, giggling silently. Chase felt his chest lighten at the sight. Beautiful, he murmured. The Verdani are bound to plant life, Niara said. These specimens help me maintain balance away from my homeworld. She guided him toward a cushioned alcove. Elria can rest here. It's shielded by biomass density. As the child curled into the nest, her sudden gasp shattered the calm. She clutched her temples, eyes wide, trembling. Elria Chase dropped beside her. What's wrong? Nira placed her palm against the girl's forehead, closing her eyes. She's receiving something telepathically, overwhelming her. Then faint but distinct, a voice brushed Chase's mind, fragile, halting, yet undeniable. Danger coming. Bad men from Cage Place. Looking for me. Chase's blood ran cold. She's projecting. Niera's face tightened. 3 ships inbound. Hunters from Proxima. Protective fury surged through Chase. They're not taking her back. Niera hurried to a hidden panel revealing a sleek comrade. I'll contact my alliance network. While she worked, Chase held Aurea close. You did good, kiddo, he whispered. Really good. She relaxed against him, trust radiating from her small body. Nera returned grim. The ships are already requesting emergency docking clearance disguised as health inspectors. Thorn will let them in. Chase cursed under his breath. Then we have to move. There is a Laurelian colony, Niara said. Hidden in the Cygnus Reach. They could protect her. Chase's heart twisted. She deserves that, but... You've grown attached, Niara observed softly. Is it that obvious? He gave a rueful smile. It's crazy. I've only known her a day, but she's filled the void I thought would never close. Niara's gaze softened. The Verdani believe souls find each other across the stars when they are meant to heal together. Their eyes met, and the air thickened with unspoken possibility. Chase's pulse raced. Then Elria stiffened again, whispering into both their minds, man with 3 eyes, angry. Thorn. The door chime blared. Niara pressed a device into Elria's hands. This will mask your life signs temporarily. Chase, take her through the bathroom access to the hydroponics bay. Wait for me there. Chase hesitated, then caught Niara's hand without thinking. Her fingers twined with his cool and smooth against his calloused skin. Humans aren't the only ones who can be brave, she said softly. On impulse, Chase leaned in and kissed her. Brief electric, a jolt of life. Her eyes widened, then darkened with answering heat. That's for luck, he murmured. A fascinating custom, she breathed. We'll have to explore it later. The chime blared again. Niara composed herself and opened the door. Thorn loomed, suspicion blazing in all 3 eyes. From the bathroom doorway, Chase slipped, with Elria into the shadows, his heart pounding, with equal parts fear and something else, something he hadn't dared feel in years. Hope and the dangerous spark of desire. The hydroponics bay smelled of damp soil and ozone and artificial jungle carved into the belly of Delta 9. Chase crouched among towering fronds. Elria pressed close against him, her small hand clutched in his callous grip. The device Niara had given her pulsed faintly, masking her life signs, but Chase's heart hammered like a drum. Through the narrow access hatch, he could still hear Thorn's voice, low and commanding. Niara's answers flowed smooth and measured her tone, even as polished stone. She was buying them time. Chase could only hope she could stall long enough. Elria's telepathic whisper brushed his mind. He suspects. He is angry. Yeah, Chase muttered, stroking her white hair. I figured as much. Minutes felt like hours before Niara slipped through the bay doors, her silver hair catching the glow of bioluminescent plants. Her composure cracked for the first time, relief softening her emerald features as she saw them. He knows, she said simply. We don't have until morning. We leave tonight. Chase tightened his grip on Elria's hand. Then let's move. Niara led them through back quarters, the shadows of her plants still clinging to her robes. The main shuttle bays will be locked down by Thorn's orders, she explained. But the maintenance bays are prone to technical malfunctions. Chase arched a brow. Convenient one. Niara's lips curved faintly. I may have arranged one. When they reached the bay, Chase understood. The cameras were dark security drones, powered down as if the system had simply decided to take a nap. A stroke of luck, or Niara's careful planning. They boarded a maintenance shuttle larger than his with sturdier engines and patched shielding. As Chase powered systems, Niara leaned over his shoulder, her presence close, her scent like alien blossoms after rain. "You can fly this?" she asked. Chase smirked. "I can fly a brick if it's got thrusters." She arched an elegant brow. "That inspires such confidence." "Hang on," Chase muttered, punching thrusters. The shuttle roared out of Delta 9's underbelly. Behind them, alarms began to wail. They were already marked fugitives. It didn't take long for pursuit to arrive. 3 sleek vessels peeled away from Proxima's shadow, their dark hulls glinting like knives. They arrowed toward the shuttle faster, deadlier. "Persistent bastards," Chase growled, shoving the throttle forward. Niara's eyes flicked to the sensors. "Proxima hunters. They won't stop until they've taken Elria." "Not happening," Chase said flatly. Elria stirred in her seat, clutching her temples. Her voice brushed both their minds. "They want me. They will not stop. They feel greedy." "Stay with me, kiddo," Chase said. "We're going to shake them." The void stretched wide before them, and in its heart loomed the Karak Disputed Zone asteroid fields twisted by ion storms, a graveyard where patrols dared not tread. "You're not actually going in there," Niara said, incredulous. "Where else?" Chase grinned grimly. "Hunters hate risk. Let's see how badly they want her." The shuttle plunged into the belt. Asteroids the size of cities spun lazily, colliding in slow-motion chaos. Bolts of ion lightning leapt between rocks, washing the void in violet light. The hunters followed. Chase cursed under his breath, yanking the controls. The shuttle dove between tumbling boulders, its shields sparking as dust storms lashed across the hull. Warning klaxons screamed. "Shields at 60%, Niara shouted. "Good enough," Chase replied. His hands moved like instinct, weaving them through impossible gaps. Sweat stung his eyes, but he didn't dare blink. The hunters fired. Energy bolts scorched past one, grazing the port side, shaking the shuttle violently. Elria cried out, clinging to Niara's arm. "Chase!" Niara shouted over the alarms. "There's a storm forming ahead, Class 5 intensity." "Perfect." "You're insane," Niara muttered. "Probably," Chase admitted, a wild grin cutting across his face. "But we've got one advantage they don't." He slammed open the engineering panel. Maintenance shuttles are built with heavy electromagnetic shielding for crawling around reactor cores. If I reroute power and adjust harmonics, we can ride the storm currents. Niara caught on instantly, like a protective bubble. Exactly. They worked side by side, hands moving in sync across the controls. Chase rerouted conduits. Niara adjusted power relays, her silver hair plastered against her cheek with sweat. Together, they forced the shuttle's shielding into an unstable but potent new configuration. Elria's voice trembled in their minds. "They're still behind us." "Not for long," Chase muttered. He dove straight into the heart of the storm. The shuttle screamed as it hit the storm wall. Violet lightning hammered their shields, making every system flicker and groan. The cockpit shook so violently, Chase thought his teeth might rattle loose. Niara braced herself, one hand gripping the console, the other on his arm. "Shields won't last more than minutes. Then that's all we need." On the rear display, the hunters tried to follow. One vessel peeled away immediately, unwilling to risk annihilation. The second pressed in, shields flaring. The third, the largest, doggedly pursued, firing blindly through the chaos. "Persistent bastard," Chase snarled. Niara's eyes flicked to him, a strange mixture of fear and admiration. "You're enjoying this." He flashed a grin through the sweat. "Humans do stupid things well." Niara laughed, a wild musical sound, astonishing amid the storm. Terrifying and arousing. Chase nearly choked. "Not the time?" "Perhaps no better time," she murmured. Before he could respond, the pursuing vessel overloaded. Sparks burst across its hull, systems failing spectacularly. The storm ripped it apart, leaving wreckage tumbling like shrapnel. "Two down," Chase muttered. "One stubborn left." The largest hunter clung to their tail, relentless. "Damn," Niara breathed. "They'll ride us until we're dust." "Not if I take us deeper." "Deeper." "Trust me," Chase said, throwing the shuttle into a suicidal dive. They plunged into the storm's core. Darkness swallowed them, pierced only by violet lightning that flared so bright it seared after images across their eyes. The shuttle groaned shield screaming. Systems winked out first comms, then long-range sensors, then life support. Elria whimpered, curling into Niara's arms. Chase's chest tightened, but his grip never wavered on the controls. Nara reached across the console, her hand sliding into his. If we don't make it, we will, Chase said fiercely. But if we don't, she pressed her eyes molten gold in the stormlight. I want you to know, last night meant something. The memory of their kiss, their tentative closeness surged in his mind. Heat flared, cutting through the cold fear. It meant something to me too, he said, squeezing her hand. But this isn't the end, I promise you. The storm itself seemed to answer, hurling them like a toy through its currents. The shuttle spun controls useless until suddenly blinding light. They burst out of the storm, tumbling into clear space. Systems flickered weakly back to life. Chase whooped, slamming his fist against the console. We made it. Nara laughed again, relief breaking over her face like sunlight after rain. You insane, impossible human. The last hunter had vanished, lost to the storm's fury. They were free for now. Exhaustion pressed on them, but there was no time to rest. Ahead loomed Ferox Outpost, a sprawling collection of modules and towers lashed together in chaotic fashion, glowing like a hive in the void. Nara's smile faded. Fro is neutral ground, but dangerous. Pirates, smugglers, opportunists. We'll need new identities and a new ship to reach the Cygnus Reach. And for that, we'll need Dax. Who's Dax? Chase asked warily. An information broker. He's helped the Alliance before, but his loyalty is negotiable. Sounds charming, Chase muttered. They docked in one of the outpost's shadowed bays. Disguises cloaked their faces. Niara, draped in her flowing robes, Chase in a hooded jacket, scavenged from the shuttle, Elria between them, clutching both their hands. Remember, Chase whispered to her, crouching low. Stay close. Don't think too loudly. She nodded solemnly. Inside the outpost was a maze of neon markets, cantinas, and shadowed corridors where every gaze lingered too long. Predators everywhere, eyes gleaming with hunger, some for profit, some for flesh, some for secrets. Elria's whisper brushed their minds. Hunters here. Close. Chase swore under his breath. Let's make this quick. Dax's chamber was all gleaming obsidian and cascading data streams, his elongated head sprouting 6 eye stalks that swiveled independently. His voice, a synthetic purr, greeted Niara warmly. Niara of the Verdani, profitable as always to see you. Niara's tone was cool. We require transport to the Cygnus Reach and new identities. Dax's eye stalks swiveled toward Elria, half concealed in her hood. How interesting. A Lorelian child. Quite valuable. Chase bristled, stepping forward. She's not for sale. Everything has a price, Dax purred. The Proxima facility offers quite the bounty, and the Krell Dominion would pay double. Panels hissed. 4 armed guards emerged, weapons gleaming. The door sealed shut. Chase's pulse spiked, but his voice was steady. You've made a mistake. Have I? Dax mused. You think you've got one valuable prize, Chase said. But Proxima isn't just hunting a child. They're hiding a galaxy-wide trafficking network. And I can give the Commerce Guild everything they need to burn it down. Dax's eye stalks quivered, intrigued. Help us escape, Chase pressed, or watch your precious outpost become ground zero for a guild crackdown. You'll lose everything. For a long, taut silence, only the hum of servers filled the chamber. Then Dax inclined his elongated head. A compelling argument. Very well. My personal courier vessel, Docking Bay 7, prepped for Cygnus Reach, identities included. Niara's eyes narrowed. And the hunters? Dax's mouth parts twisted in a smile. They'll have an unfortunate misunderstanding with some Karak smugglers. Chase gathered Elria close as they descended into the hidden maintenance shaft. For once, he didn't look back. Minutes later, they soared free in Dax's sleek courier, far faster and more luxurious than anything Chase had flown before. Behind them, chaos erupted as hunters clashed with smugglers in the outpost quarters. Niara exhaled tension bleeding from her shoulders. He kept his word. He kept his profit margin, Chase corrected. We were worth more alive. Elria crawled onto his lap, her small hand curling against his chest. For the first time since he'd found her in that cage, she looked like a child again, safe, content, drifting towards sleep. You were magnificent back there, Niara said softly, standing beside him at the helm. I've never seen anyone outwit Dax before. Just applied some human ingenuity, Chase said with a modest shrug. Niara's lips curved. Your kind creates opportunities from impossible situations. It's one of the qualities I find irresistible. Her hand found his, their fingers twined. For the first time in years, Chase Summers felt not just purpose, but connection, something fragile, something new, something worth fighting for. And as the stars streaked past, he realized the hardest battles weren't behind them. They were only just beginning. 3 days passed in the black between stars. The courier vessel whispered through void and silence, carrying 3 fugitives who had become something more than fugitives. For Chase, it was the first time in years he felt whole. His hands moved easily across the ship's controls, his shoulders no longer carrying only the weight of ghosts, but also the fragile promise of a future. Nara sat at the secondary console, her silver hair pulled back into a practical braid, her emerald skin catching the starlight that spilled through the observation dome. Every so often, her eyes would wander to him and linger. And Elria, their little Lurelian, was blooming. On the first day, she whispered only through their minds, her fragile telepathy halting but growing stronger. By the second, she spoke in broken phrases aloud, her small voice carrying the cautious wonder of someone learning music for the first time. By the third, she laughed, really laughed, filling the vessel with a sound neither Chase nor Niara ever wanted to forget. On their final night before reaching the Cygnus Reach, the child finally slept in her cabin, curled beneath a thermal blanket, her white hair glowing faintly in the dim light. Chase and Niara stood together in the observation dome. The galaxy spread wide before them, a river of stars, the brushstrokes of nebulae, the silent majesty of creation itself. What happens when we reach the colony? Chase asked quietly, voicing the question that had gnawed at him since they'd left Rock's outpost. Niara's eyes softened. Elria will be safe among her kind. She'll learn to control her gifts, to grow without fear. The elders will guard her fiercely. And us, Chase asked, turning to her. Her gaze didn't falter. The Alliance always needs those willing to risk everything for what's right, especially humans who can outwit hunters and brokers in the same week. Chase gave a low laugh. Is that a job offer? It's more than that, Niara said softly, stepping closer. The Verdani do not take lightly what we shared. Connection, intimacy, it binds us. What began as survival has become something more. He remembered every second of the night before their escape, the way her body had fit against his, the surprising tenderness behind her strength, the deep connection that had gone beyond desire. It had been healing. It had been more than he thought possible after Sarah's death. On Earth, Chase murmured, sliding his arms around her waist, we say family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who want you in their life so badly they do anything to protect you. Niara's lips curved. A wise philosophy. Her voice dropped husky. And I never expected this. This, he asked, leaning closer. Her smile deepened. A human. A child not my own. And yet, a family. When their lips met, it wasn't the desperate electricity of their first kiss in the storm, nor the fierce release of survival. It was something quieter, deeper. A promise sealed under the stars. The next day, the Lurelian colony emerged from the void like a secret dream. Nestled within an asteroid field, crystalline structures shimmered with inner light, tethered by bridges that glowed like veins of liquid silver. Floating gardens bloomed in open space, bioluminescent flora painting the darkness in hues of violet and blue. Elria's breath caught. She pressed her face to the viewport, her mind brushing theirs with a rush of pure joy. Home. Chase's throat tightened. He'd brought her here. Against every odd, every hunter, every storm, he delivered her back to her people. The docking bay welcomed them, crystalline walls, refracting light like prisms. Elders awaited tall Lurelians with skin like twilight and eyes like oceans. When Elria stepped forward, they recognized her instantly. Gasps and tears followed. One elder dropped to their knees, hands trembling, as they touched her face. Lost child returned, their voice rang like chimes. Elria turned, looking back at Chase and Niara. Fear flickered in her eyes as if she thought they might leave her, now that she was safe. Chase knelt, his big hands resting on her small shoulders. We're not going anywhere, kiddo. Not unless you want us to. She flung her arms around his neck, clinging fiercely. Don't leave me. His chest ached, but he smiled through it. Never. Nira placed a hand on Elria's back. You have two families now, she whispered. Both will love you. 6 months later, the colony was no longer just a refuge, it was home. Their dwelling stood on the outskirts, a blend of human practicality, Verdani botanical artistry, and Laurelian crystal aesthetics. Vines twined with steel supports, glowing crystals lined the walls, and human tools hummed in the workshop. It was messy, imperfect, and alive. On the terrace, Chase stood watching Elria play with other Laurelian children. Her laughter rang across the garden, bright and unafraid. She was no longer the trembling girl in a cage. She was free. Nira slipped her arm around his waist, leaning into him. Second thoughts about leaving station maintenance, she teased. Chase snorted. Not a single one. Fixing air filters doesn't compare to this. Her smile was soft. I never imagined rescuing the saddest girl in a shelter would lead to this. Neither did I, Chase admitted. But maybe that's what makes it real. Above them, stars winked into view as the artificial sky shifted from day to twilight. Chase tightened his arm around Niara, warmth settling in his chest. From grief to purpose, from loneliness to love, from a chance rescue to a family forged across the stars. No one had expected it, not even him. And that, he thought, made it the greatest story of all.